In the mid-21st century, the global economic landscape is undergoing a seismic shift. At its center stands a giant that once acted as a black hole for talent. The United States has always been a country blessed by geography. It possesses the most extensive inland waterway network in the world. This natural infrastructure, centered around the Mississippi River, has historically reduced logistics costs to a fraction of its competitors. Furthermore, the shale revolution allowed the U.S. to achieve not just energy independence, but true energy hegemony. Yet, what truly completed this superpower was not just its hard power, but its soft power: diversity, inclusion, and the respect for human rights. These values acted as a magnet, drawing the world's brightest minds to Silicon Valley for decades. But today, this giant is dismantling the very pillars of its own prosperity under the banner of isolationism. I believe we must analyze these policy shifts through a purely objective lens, moving beyond political rhetoric to look at the economic fundamentals. Current immigration restrictions can be summarized as a giant cutting its own internet line because it fears a virus. To solve local issues like illegal stay, the nation is physically severing the connection through which data and innovation flow. This is a classic case of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, discarding the drivers of innovation along with the problems. American tech hegemony was never built solely by native-born talent. Silicon Valley is a global coalition in every sense. As of 2024, 55% of U.S. unicorn companies were founded by immigrants. That is 319 out of 582 companies. These companies created $1.5 trillion in value, a figure equivalent to the entire GDP of South Korea. On average, each of these immigrant-founded unicorns employs 859 people, serving as a primary engine for high-quality jobs. Furthermore, 46% of Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants or their children. This is the bedrock of the corporate ecosystem. When the U.S. raises barriers for high-skilled immigrants, it is giving up the probability that the next NVIDIA or Tesla will be born on its soil. Consider the proposal to increase H-1B visa fees to $100,000. This acts as a heavy innovation tax. In highly mobile markets, these entry costs trigger capital and production relocation. Companies will move R&D centers to where the costs are lower. The U.S. university system functions like a refinery. It imports crude oil, the students, and exports high-value refined products. Today, 71% of graduate students in computer science are international students. This pipeline is critical. By blocking the exit of this pipeline, the U.S. is not just hurting universities, it is cutting off the supply of researchers tech giants need. Beyond regulations, I believe uncertainty is even more dangerous. It signals that the U.S. is no longer a stable place to build a life. High-skilled talent is highly mobile. When the U.S. imposes a cost of uncertainty, they move to rational alternatives like Canada or Europe. If tech is about future potential, agriculture and construction are about immediate survival. Here, isolationism is like burning down the house. American agriculture is structurally dependent on migrant labor. Policies like mass deportation shift the labor supply curve violently. Look at Georgia's past anti-immigration law. 11,000 jobs went unfilled, and crops rotted in the fields because there was no one to pick them. In California, the ICE crackdowns led to a 70% absence in farm labor, forcing many to abandon their harvest entirely. Some argue that reducing labor will accelerate automation, but I think the reality is an automation paradox. When labor costs are artificially suppressed by other policies, owners have no incentive to invest in expensive automation machinery. The result is a labor vacuum that leads to supply shortages and immediate price hikes for daily groceries. This inflation acts as a regressive tax, hitting the lowest-income American families the hardest. The construction sector faces a similar crisis. The U.S. is already short 3.7 million homes. 23% of construction workers are immigrants. Mass deportation plans will only drive up rents and exacerbate the housing crisis. This creates a vicious cycle where housing costs consume more of the disposable income, shrinking overall domestic consumption. While the U.S. closes its gates, competitors are celebrating. They are not seeing a trickle-down effect, but a spilled talent effect. Canada is the most aggressive in this hunt. They launched an open work permit specifically for US H-1B holders. They absorbed 10,000 high-skilled workers in just 48 hours. This is an unprecedented migration of intellectual capital. Tech giants like Microsoft and Google are expanding in Vancouver and Toronto to house talent that couldn't obtain US visas. This institutional flexibility allows Canada to process visas in 2 weeks, while the US system remains stuck in months of lottery luck. Asia, countries like South Korea are picking up the cards the US has discarded through the K-E-74 visa system. Taiwan's employment gold card ensures that world-class graduates can live and work freely, strengthening their AI and semiconductor industries. Japan, traditionally a closed society, has also launched new 2026 policies to attract global talent at all costs. In Europe, Germany and the UK are lowering thresholds for their blue cards to absorb IT and engineering talent fleeing the US. Perhaps the most fatal irony is that US immigration policy is inadvertently helping its greatest rival, China. The China Initiative created a climate of fear, leading 75% of Chinese scientists in the US to consider leaving. Between 2018 and 2021, over 4,900 seasoned scientists returned to China, taking their US-funded training with them. China is facing a severe aging crisis. Its only way out is productivity growth through technological breakthroughs. By sending these minds back, the US is providing the human capital China needs most, for free. This reverse brain drain is accelerating China's path to technological self-reliance, a goal they couldn't achieve with money alone. Many Americans overlook the sheer economic value of their soft power. Diversity is an economic variable, not just a moral one. McKinsey research shows that companies with high ethnic diversity are 36% more likely to see above-average profits. Diversity prevents groupthink and allows companies to understand global markets more deeply, driving innovation. The strength of the US economy comes from predictability and the rule of law. Investors trust dollar assets for their stability. However, changing rules overnight through executive orders damages this regulatory quality and increases the risk premium. Long-term, this lowers the appeal for foreign direct investment, potentially raising borrowing costs for the US government itself. 21st century economic warfare is won not by the height of walls, but by the strength and number of your connections. I believe that for the US to remain great, it must realize that cutting the internet line to stop a virus is a self-defeating strategy. If the giant stays behind its gates, it may find itself alone while the rest of the world connects to a new network of innovation. Economic history suggests that isolation is often the first step toward irrelevance. The question is, can the giant afford this silence? This is the mission of the Fortune Classified, to peel back the layers of global business and reveal the hidden details that define our world. If you found this report insightful, consider joining our community of strategic thinkers. Subscribe to TFC and hit the bell icon to never miss a classified update. See you in the next report.